Adam, thank you so much for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. As I've just said to you there, since being made aware of your newsletter and just being almost in awe of how fundamentally interesting it is, I'm really looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, as I've mentioned to you, we begin with, is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Yeah, I mean, uh, in my line of work, it's nothing but questions. Like the thing that propels me forward is a series of questions that really feel like a series of demonic possessions. That like the reason I'm a blogger, the reason I'm like working on a book is because I feel like there are these questions that possess me that won't go away until I put the right words in the right order. That it's like almost literally like finding an incantation, and then they exit the body and a new one takes its place. So the one that is front of mind right now, I'm working on this book that is like framed around. This isn't so much. This doesn't begin as a philosophical question, but it turns into a philosophical question, which is why did it take humans 300,000 years to invent the toilet? And which is really just like why did everything take so long? Like we've there's been many humans and many generations of them. Only the last 12 generations have known the pleasure of indoor plumbing. So like what were we doing for all that time? And I think the short answer is that we didn't evolve to do science. We didn't evolve to do technology and discovery. The fact that we do them at all is a miracle. And it's why, and it's not surprising that we don't do more of them. But I think we could if we understood what they're like. Or if we understood just how weird they are, and how we basically have to use our mind in the wrong gear to do them. So that is a question that structures a lot of my thinking and reading and writing these days.
Could you give me a sense, just first of all, that sense or that notion of a demonic possession, almost like has that been something that
Yeah,
is that something that's you noticed at an early stage in life, or when did you even come into contact with that?
yeah. This is something that I think I've felt a lot more now that I work in the format of a blog. That every 2 weeks I want to put out something that is interesting or something that at least surprised me. So like a piece of writing that I surprised myself in the course of assembling it. And the more that I've done that, the more I think I have felt possessed because I've opened myself up to questions of this kind. That in the course of answering them, I'm going to reach a thought or a conclusion that I didn't have at the beginning. So I found this at different points in life that like your default thinking becomes like colonized by whatever it is you're working on at the time. So when I used to do like stand up, I would find that like I would be possessed by the idea of like is this a setup, is this a joke, like how can I, but like I'm walking around and I'm thinking of jokes, and now I'm walking around and thinking of questions to get to the bottom of.
Can you describe? Because I find that really interesting. Just the sometimes I think that I'd love to. I think at one point in life I thought I'd just love to have something that completely consumes me. And then it's kind of an interesting relationship with that when I find myself on in air quotes days off, and as you say, that pattern is that almost that thing, that pattern is still kind of ongoing in my head. Just from your point of view, is this something that you would have aspired to? Is this something you revel in, or how do you relate to that kind
Yeah.
of process?
I feel really grateful for it,
Yeah,
even though it's not always pleasant. In fact, I think most of the time it's not pleasant. Like most of the time it is. I wrote a piece about this recently, but like it's annoying. I think in the same way that people find it annoying when a picture frame is slightly askew, and you get a burst of pleasure from making the picture frame level again. But like it doesn't cancel out the frustration you felt from it being askew, and so like writing blog posts, writing chapters is just the feeling of putting many picture frames straight. But like each time you like each moment, like oh no, it's too far to the left. Oh no, it's too far to the right. And like I so want to make it straight. And when I do, it does feel really good for a little bit. But like actually, the fun comes from this constant straightening. It's like in playing whack-a-mole, the fun part is whacking the moles, but like the moles have to keep coming out in order for you to whack them. Like that's what keeps the game going. And so I think it's like almost a category error to be like, does this make me happy? Like, is this like, am I content? Like, no, I'm not at all. Nor do I want to be. Like maybe there's some higher level of being where I wouldn't feel this way, but I think I would. I know from experience that whenever I've not had something like this, I've sought it out. So I've tried to manufacture it for myself. So clearly, I want it. It sounds like you've had a similar thing.
Yeah, but I do. But even though in what you said there, even just, I wonder, even is it a higher sense of being, or is it just even the realization that this is the pat, or this is the, I don't want to say the game, but
hmm
even just the awareness that there is an enjoyment in the, I don't even say moving towards finality or balance or something like this, but even just the constant responding and being kind of attuned to that responding, and even just as you're describing that, like the kind of crafting of the enjoyment or the friction that's kind of inherent in that process, it's kind of something to be celebrated itself there. So it's kind of a strange contentment that exists behind
Yeah.
the reaching or the seeking within it, if you get me.
Yeah. I think that like really the way that you could suffer in this lifestyle is to to be like constantly angry that that the moles have come back up again, and to
Yeah,
feel like something has gone wrong because the game is continuing, and to feel like no, I'm trying to get all the moles to stay down, and that
yeah,
like that like yeah, you would really be unhappy if you think that if success is measured by the number of moles currently popped up. And if instead, to your point, if you just accept that like this is what the game is, that like more moles are going to pop up, that like it will continue to feel frustrating, but it's not, but in a productive way. That like it will feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, even though like I really want to hit the mole with a mallet. Like I want to make the sentences right, I want to make the ideas clear. But as soon as I do that, I'm going to move on to the next one.
So just when you mentioned that initial, the question you're asking yourself at the moment, if for humans to have existed for over 300,000 years, and only recently we've created the toilet, what was occurring for you that even that led to that question? Well, as you say, it's a much bigger thing, but just even that that curiosity or even that specific question emerging.
Yeah, this came from a post that I was working on, which came from I was on like the Wikipedia list of like the timeline of human discoveries for whatever reason, and it's not like the most authoritative list of what humans have done, but like people have whatever like any Wikipedia page, it's like interesting even if it's not comprehensive. And what I noticed was like the order is weird. Um, that like there's all this stuff that we did a really long time ago that seems really hard, like the ancient Sumerians were solving quadratic equations. Like the in 700 AD, the Indian mathematician Brahmagupta is interpolating um, pieces of the sine function, which is the thing that I don't know how to do. Like I think maybe we got there in high school math, but like I don't remember how to do it. And like this is over 1,500 years ago, or like less than 1,500 years ago, but a long time ago. But like meanwhile, it's not until like the 1600s that people start wondering, like, oh, maybe it's not true that that like oysters come from slime and mice comes from straw, and like tadpoles come from mud. Like maybe actually living things only come from other living things. Like the kind of things that we could have done 1,000 years earlier while we were doing other complicated, counterintuitive things. So I really got interested in the question of like, how could it be? How is it possible that the order is so strange? There's all these really hard things that came early, mainly in mathematics, logistics, astronomy. All these really difficult things that came late, like in biology, psychology, and even things like accounting, like double entry bookkeeping doesn't exist until the 1400s. Like, how's that possible? That's what I just really wanted to know.
And when you've started this inquiry, like, are there things that make sense? Is there satisfaction in the exploration, or how would you say you're kind of navigating it?
Yeah, there's always the satisfaction of like, all right, I've solved this question to to a certain degree of approximation, but then I find some new thing that doesn't fit with it, or I read some book that tackles like a related question, and I'm like, oh, now I need to account for all of that. That like there's like mountains beyond mountains in the way that this thing could be answered, and each sentence could be its own book. And this is like a recipe for insanity of just like there's each mole is made itself out of an infinite number of moles that need to be whacked, like it's moles all the way down. And so there's no resolution to it other than like eventually you're going to gloss something. Like you just can't answer the question comprehensively, but you might be able to answer it satisfactorily to you or to someone else, even though there's going to be worlds left to explain and to understand.
And by the way, I do love that. I think a lot of the times when we think they're, even just questions that don't really seem, you can't really conclusively say they have an answer. And not saying in your direct inquiry at the moment, but I think there's just something magical that happens to us in just continually tending to the question. I think there's something really worthwhile even in just that. But when you thought of this line of inquiry and just thinking of just the sheer scope, as you say, mountains behind mountains, like is there a moment, like how do you even begin to sense like progress or clarity within just something as kind of large and as wide spanning as you're looking into.
Yeah, there's a few different, I think, sources of satisfaction. One is um, I stop being surprised by the sources that I read, that I come up against the same claims or the same people making them. When someone references something, I've read that thing. So there's a satisfaction in feeling like I have a mastery over what other people have said about this. Like that's one way that I get a sense of progress. Another is feeling like I'm satisfied for me that like if I had encountered the thing that I'm writing, I would have felt like, okay, that's enough. Um, Even though I understand that like this could be there's a million other worlds to explore here. Another piece of satisfaction is can I account for this to other people? Like, can I give a talk about this? Can I explain it in a conversation? And when people ask me questions, I don't immediately like run out of material or ways to answer them. None of these necessarily signal that I've gotten to the truth. Like one, like these are all like basically like social truth of just like, have I satisfied myself and other people? Have I mastered what other people have done about this? Um, doesn't mean I'm right, and like that's what keeps me hungry. Because I think I can sense that like it is possible to draw closer to right, even if I've satisfied these other people, even if I don't see holes in it anymore. Like there's still there's always a world left.
For you, just curious, like was this sense of curiosity always quite clear to you? Like, were
Mhm.
there was this something from as far back as you can remember? And did you always have the drive to engage with it, if you get me? Because I think this is
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it's forced. Would that be fair, or how would you
Yeah.
describe it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I've always wanted to understand things better, but I think it's only recently that I've understood what it would mean to understand the world better. I had a radicalizing experience in academia. So I got a PhD in social psychology, but left academia to do this instead because I came to feel like, oh, I wasn't actually getting closer to the truth. That I thought that like, oh, it's really important to write papers and like run studies that are like this and papers that sound like all the other papers, only to realize like, oh, actually, and it's really hard to describe. Like, actually, this all might be nothing. Like, it is possible for us all to be participating in sort of like a mass hysteria that like the things we treat as meaningful are in fact meaningful, that the claims make any sense, that they build on each other, that they're all going somewhere. And I think in psychology in particular, there's lots of psychology that I love and that's interesting. But I started to realize like, oh, what's gonna what's it going to look like in 50 years? If we just keep doing more of this, then what will we have other than a higher stack of papers? And the more I thought about that, the more I realized, like, oh, I haven't really been curious so far. Like, this is my first day being curious, which is to ask, like, to start asking about the invisible questions, the ones that just like, what is this all for? What does it amount to? What can we actually learn by doing this? And until that point, I think I had just been doing mimicry. I hadn't been doing curiosity. So for me, I think it's pretty recent vintage.
I've obviously read your Substack and what you're referring to here as well. Just to hear directly from you, like what was that like, that realization, and was it a was it that kind of was it a slow burn? Was there
Mm,
were there things that you kept recognizing that did you and I'll stop asking so many
yeah.
compounded questions, but like I'm just almost trying to
Yeah.
go through the gears myself. Like was there
Yeah.
a sense of
Uh,
denial of it, or how did that process go?
I think it felt half pleasurable and half like crazy making. Um, so the pleasurable part is this feeling of like, oh, now when I think it's like cool to think thoughts that seemingly no one else has thought about. Like it feels like a secret that I get to know. It makes me feel optimistic. Like it always felt there was something wrong about what I was doing, but I thought was that like I was wrong for or I wasn't doing it right. And to realize like actually maybe I was picking up on something here that running another study like the 100 that I've run before maybe isn't gonna push the field forward. There's like I think a freedom and a joy in realizing that like where the tension is actually coming from and that it's not coming from my own inability. But it also makes me feel crazy because like everybody else is bought into this. Like it's like we're all playing a game of Monopoly, and like the money is made up. Like it's made out of like plastic and paper, and like, but everyone treats it like it's real. And so when you walk away from it, people are like, "Wait, you're just going to leave all of your Monopoly money on the table?" And I'm like, "Well." But it's Monopoly money. You can't use it to buy goods or services. And they're like, "Well, we think it's real," and I'm like, "But it's not." But like, it's really hard for us to turn off social reality. Like it should make you feel like a crazy person because we have to live with each other. Like historically, it was like not a good strategy to alienate yourself from your community. And so like the mind has a lot of like safety glass around like treating things other people are doing as not real. And so that's the part that like I had to confront like many times over and be like, no, it really is like it is monopoly money. It's not real, no matter how much other people are trying to make their stack higher.
And just for you personally, because to even go through that process maybe individually, but then to put something out publicly and to see it get response and things like that, just from your perspective, how was that to navigate that?
Yeah, I think what really carried me through the most was having a few friends who were even crazier than me. So when I talk to academics, they think I'm a crazy person, and I'm like, you don't know the craziest. I know some people who are who would make your toes curl. The thing that they like, the ideas that they entertain, not even politically, just like scientifically. And so it was helpful to not be the craziest person that I knew. It was cool when I started writing and it got a response. But it just doesn't. I'm sure this is true for anybody who works on the internet. Like it just doesn't feel the way it feels with real. All those people are real, but like with people that you know personally, that like. Like a post getting a bunch of likes doesn't make me feel more certain in the ideas. It like makes me feel pleased that I did something that resonates with other people, but it is so different from talking to someone face to face and feeling like they like believe the claims that I'm making. So I think it was more like the few people that I knew than the larger number of people that I reached on the blog. Really, what that allowed me to do when I realized like, oh, I can make a living doing this was I derationalized everything about academia. So like, oh, I don't have to like this anymore, and so now I'm free to dislike it, and it's like getting broken up with, and you're like, oh, actually, my partner's laugh is like not it's like it's grating and horrible, and I hate it, and like, oh, actually, it's not fine the way that they treat me. all these realizations that we have after a bad relationship ends, was like the relationship that I had leaving academia.
There's something kind of haunting though about what you said there about kind of how synthetic that feels. And I just love how kind of grounding your response to it feels, how people are actually responding to me right now in my physical presence carries a lot more weight.
Yeah, I think the internet is a place like designed to make you go crazy in a bad way. And I think it's because we bring to it all the psychology that we evolved for dealing with people in the way that we always did, which is face to face in small groups. And I think we're really good at face to face small groups. Like we're good at keeping track of people's reputations, like who should you trust, who should you not trust, like who knows what thing, who can I turn to for advice or support or instruction. Um, when we go online, we like totally lack any context for anyone that we're interacting with. And so it just like scrambles all of our abilities. So, like, when people are mean to you on the internet, it feels horrible. It feels much like it would feel interpersonally, even though it's nothing like that. But like, often the people who are like angry online are like very disturbed individuals who this is the one outlet that they have. That, and if you met them in person, you wouldn't feel bad if they disliked you, because you'd be like, "Yeah, that person's got a lot going on. I understand like why they're angry at the world." But we don't make these like we're not able to situate people in their context when we see them online. And so I really try to discount most of the interactions that I have online unless I have a lot of them and over time. Because like it doesn't bring out people's best behavior, and I think it's just like way more stressful and fraught than what we evolved to do, which is like hang out with people and read their facial expressions and hear their tone of voice, interact with them over like many instances and see what kind of tendency they have. This is why I don't read a lot into the things that happen on the internet. And I can't because like I don't. There's a guy who emails me after every post, just to like call me names and tell me how horrible the post is. And I just like I just haven't set it, like it just automatically sends it to the trash because I'm like, I don't know what's up with this guy. I hope he's okay. But like this isn't about me. For whatever reason, I've become part of like his world that's clearly full of like anger and stress. But like I didn't choose to be there. He chose for me to be there.
It's super interesting though, isn't it? Almost the consistency of that behavior would almost bring a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
more like peace to the, if we're more sporadic, it could be, there might be, it might be open to more self questioning. But if it's almost every week or every edition that goes out, just when you mentioned the kind of stepping more into this experience of curiosity, the I guess the constraints of just how things were done, the sense of mimicry within doing work that way. When you said the word freedom there, there's a freedom within that. Can you describe what that's like to feel, like to go from, let's say, something where you feel you're doing something that has been done before, or there's a repetition to it, and kind of the I don't know the openness that seems to be, that can, where your curiosity can kind of take you at this point. Could you just give us a sense of what's that like to work the way you're working at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was working in academia, whenever I was designing a project or writing a paper, always the question in the back of my mind is, will the reviewers and editors of the journal like this? What will they say? And will they accept the paper and publish it? And so it's like putting yourself in a prison for these imaginary like it's imagining what the guards might say and like what they might want you to do. It's extremely constraining, and it's not entirely bad because you like some of the things that they want are consistent with like doing good science or writing clearly, but many things aren't. Like a lot of it is just like what are their tastes and how can I please them. And this is really constraining. And so when instead you serve at the pleasure of the internet, and it's like now instead of three anonymous reviewers, there are there are possibly 8 billion anonymous readers out there that I could please or piss off. um for me anyway, I just like stop thinking about it nearly as much. I feel so much less constrained because I'm like, look, I hope and I expect that I'm not that weird of a person. If something doesn't make sense to me, it's probably not going to make sense to someone else. If something's interesting to me, it's going to be interesting to someone else. If something feels right to me, it will hopefully feel right to someone else. And so I can now trust my internal signals a lot more. That like, is this clear? Is this interesting? Is this right? If I feel very strongly about those things, then other people might disagree and they can stop reading. But I trust that it will feel that way to someone else as well. And like that freedom feels really good. It also feels really frightening because now it's like now it's entirely up to me. Like when I talk to people who work regular jobs, it's like there's obviously a sense of constraint and just like I just need to make my boss happy. But there's also a sense of like release in I just need to make my boss happy. Like as
Yeah,
long
yeah,
as I
yeah.
know how to do that, I'm successful doing it. Like it's not so scary, especially because if you work at a conventional job, no one's gonna like blame you if things go badly. That just like, you know, if you work at Microsoft and Microsoft goes bankrupt, no one's like, you were a fool to work at Microsoft. It's like, well, you made a very reasonable choice and it didn't work out. Like you're just unlucky. Whereas if you do something like become a blogger, and it doesn't work out, people are going to be like, yeah, obviously it didn't work out, you idiot. Like it's on you. um, and so you know the fact that I don't have any particular people to please means I also don't have any particular people to rely on or any particular people to blame if I fail. And so that freedom is also quite frightening. But like mostly day to day, it's like it's very invigorating. You know, it's like climbing a rock face without a rope, which is a thing I would never do. But I will write words for strangers on the internet, which feels emotionally equivalent.
That scares the shit out of me too when I'm watching it. It looks wonderful to do, but yeah, it's something I'm mildly impressed with when I see that. But that sense though of the frightening, the you know the parts of it that can be frightening. How have you? What is it about that? Like, because there's something in it which I don't know. The more I pay attention to life, it's not that everything comes with a pro and a con, or there's a cost to every gift or this kind of thing. I'm not trying to say that it's some zero sum game, not at all, because I think what you touched on there, there's a there's an aliveness or there's a real sense of aliveness that goes with even some of these feelings that we could potentially consider to be negative or something that we'd want to avoid. What's your relationship like been with fear or anything of that kind of, or in that kind of general vicinity, since kind of stepping out into this world? In terms of just the way you're doing research or science at this point.
I think my fear feels a lot more productive than it used to. That I used to feel afraid all the time that like, oh, do I have enough papers? Like, are the papers in the right places? Is there enough in the pipeline? Like, am I going to get a job? All these things that I didn't really have control over. That like I could make myself more likely to get good outcomes, but there is this random element at the end that's like mainly uncorrelated with things that I value that just decides whether I get the things that I want. And now there's still some of that random element, but so much of what I am afraid of I can control. That like is are the words not good enough? I can make them better. Like if I have enough time, I can make them better. Like are the ideas not clear enough? If I have enough time, I can think them through and I can make them good. Are they right or wrong? Like I can do more research and figure that out. Um, and I mean, not to like it's nothing like hunting or gathering, but I feel like I understand some of the genre of that kind of fear of like being afraid of a leopard or a mastodon or something, but you do have the ability to bring it down and then eat it. Is so much different from I'm afraid that the person who controls my fate is in a bad mood, or I just made a typo on the wrong thing, and now I just don't get the thing that I applied for. Um, and so like I think that I'm more productively afraid and like less afraid overall. I remember when I was a graduate student going for runs and counting in my head the number of papers that I have, the papers that are coming out, like where those papers might go, like just these same thoughts over and over again. That don't go anywhere. Like I count them up and I start over and I count them up again and I start over. Now, when I'm going for a run, I'm thinking about like the next paragraph in the thing that I'm writing, and when I write it and I move on to the next thing.
Doesn't that there's something you said there though that I think like fear for something that feels meaningful or worthwhile versus fear of parts of a process or people's interpretation of something that but that wouldn't actually lead to an improvement in the quality of work. They're really totally different things to engage with, I
Hmm.
think. I left a career in finance before, and I'm still figuring out a lot of things. Like, and so fear
Yeah.
is definitely not a it's definitely not a in total absence from my life. But there's something about a fear that's been invited in, or that has been of my own choosing almost, versus fear in so many of the ways that you described it, that just doesn't lead to a better outcome, or me feeling that I'm maybe understanding myself more, understanding life more, like shaping or engaging with the craft in a way that feels pleasing. I just think what you said there is really important, just in terms of
Hmm.
how we think of fear.
Yeah. Was that what made you leave? Was it not wanting to feel that fear anymore, or
No, do you know, it was and you know, so the last year that I was working in it, like good things had happened. The company I was with, I was part of a team to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Like things were being offered, and anomalous stuff based on what I'd been experiencing up until that point. But really, what kind of did it for me, there is people on the scientific side of a deal, and then the people that were the kind of more financiers that I was involved with different things with. And it wasn't a judgment of the job itself. It was when people really seemed to love what they did. And so when the company had success and it was people's, like, they were all in, if you know what I mean.
mm,
I felt like an imposter then, not an
hmm,
imposter in the sense of I can't do this job because I was being told that I could do it, if you know what I mean, and other offers were being given my
yeah,
way that suggested that I could do it. But it was really just that sense of potential. You could say fear, maybe, of like something underexplored or like not engaged with, and just a growing feeling or sense that like, oh, this is going to lead to this will lead to a lot of dissatisfaction at some point. And you know, with all these interviews that I've done, it's not to suggest that, oh, everyone ought to leave the comfort of their job. Based on how my life has gone since financially, I've got I've been told I have a rather strange tolerance for uncertainty, um, that I don't think I always had though either. So I think
mm,
that there's something just in me responding to my own life situations. And you know, there's many people that I've interviewed that approach life completely different to me, but I sense they experience some peace, or they have obviously have totally different perspectives. And that was probably a driver in like, this is now over 300 people that I've interviewed around this question, initially 150 privately and for a podcast. And I don't know, there's just something really gratifying about being in contact with the vast kind of diversity or variety of people's thoughts. Because one thing for me is you know, for you maybe it's the process of peer reviewed stuff or something like that. For me, it's the almost the assumption that there's somebody that's walked a different path that could tell me more
mm,
about my own life than my own experience of my life could tell me. So it's more, I guess, an invitation just to pay attention, or to reflect on your own existence and see where that takes us. Not to
yeah,
be dismissive of the importance of things that other people learn. But you know what I mean? Like, I think we're not in enough balance of our own kind of attention or our own wisdom to what's occurring in our life.
yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you were being rewarded for something that maybe you didn't like love that much, or it sounds like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
looked at other people who are
definitely,
really
yeah,
into it, and you're like, I don't feel the way that they seem to feel about this, um,
yeah,
which is such a confusing signal because, like, when you're not good at something, it really helps you not like it.
yeah,
But when you're good at it and you're kind of iffy about it, you're like, well, maybe I like it. I certainly work a lot at it. Like maybe that means I do. And it's really hard to know when other people seem like they're into it. Like, well, what does that really feel like? That like I can see that they're like smiling. They're like, I love this. Are they feeling the same thing that I feel? Like, how did you know that you were, or come to suspect that you were feeling something different?
I curiosity, just when you mentioned it there, I think it's such a powerful force that that we're so it's so innate, I think, in us that it kind of gets trampled out. So for me, the more that curiosity grew, the less tenable staying remained. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, as you say though, like, nobody would tell you to be a blogger, right? Like,
Hmm.
you've gone to these universities, very well established universities, and you'd think a progression in different areas would be just part of the way that one could expect things to go. Um, and once again, I really don't believe in everyone should be an entrepreneur. Everyone should go. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, it's not that, but for people that do feel compelled to step outside of the situation that they're in, I think, so what we say as or value as secure or stable, it won't satisfy, or other people's opinions won't satisfy you. If that's kind of been sparked in me and in other people that maybe I interview or I encounter in life, I think there's a considerable cost that comes with not responding to that in some way. Doesn't mean tear up the script of your life. People could do it a lot better or with a
Hmm.
lot more sequential thought than I engaged with my path. But you know what I mean? Like, I do see people suffering. Like, just one person that came to mind in these interviews. She was managing a fund. She was, living a really healthy life, had the right partner, in air quotes, the right partner, the right place in New York, and then was breaking out in eczema, and then kind of came to a realization that maybe she was allergic to her own life, which, it won't matter how many people are telling you that you're doing the right thing. I think
Hmm.
if that's what you may be picking up on from your life, then when you make certain changes and this thing is no longer part of it, I think there's a lot more to this than necessarily meets the eye or societal scripts or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I've been thinking a lot about this question recently of like, how much should you suffer? Like, what's the appropriate amount of suffering? Because
Yeah,
I think we're like trying to answer that question for ourselves whenever we're like, should I work this job that pays a lot, but that like has elements that I don't like? Should I stay with this person who I love these things, but I don't love those things? Should I practice guitar if I might never be a rock star, whatever? And it's funny you mentioned like breaking out in eczema because I feel like I had an experience that taught me an appropriate level of suffering that was also skin related, which was I used to have really bad acne, and in graduate school I went on Accutane, which is like isotretinoin, which like makes you sad. Like it
yeah,
does. It like and to the point where like they'll offer you an antidepressant while you're on it. They'll make you take blood work because they're like worried that you'll have suicidal ideation. And like it like definitely made my life worse for the 6 months or whatever I was on it. And since then my skin has been so much better for the rest of my life. This was like 10 years ago that I'm like, oh, that was actually a great suffering
right,
trade-off. Like that was like the right way to do it. Here's something that if you take it, we're like very sure your life will be permanently better, but it will be also worse for a period of time you're doing this. And like we've run the studies to tell you like it's very likely you'll have the good outcome, and not the bad outcomes. And I think that like most of the trade-offs that we make are so much worse than that, that it's like, yeah, suffer for an unknown amount of time, for like an unknown amount of likelihood that you'll get this better outcome later. Like keep working this job you hate, and maybe it'll like turn into a thing you like. That I'm like, if it's not as good of a trade-off as taking Accutane, circa 2015, then like I don't want to do it. Like I'm willing to be sad, I'm willing to like experience pain, but I want to know like what's the likelihood that this like gets me closer to a goal that I want. Because if people can only be like, oh, it's all unknown, the confidence interval like overlap 0 and 1, I'm like, well
yeah,
then I don't want to suffer for it.
yeah. What just when like is there any kind of thing that you can think of in your life right now where that trade-off between
Mm,
suffering and a goal or something of that nature is kind of apparent?
yeah. Sometimes I try to think about this with like there's these force fields around ways that you need to change that feel painful to change. That like usually these are things you never even think about, and that's why they're so difficult. Like they're so well protected. uh, I don't think I'm much better at recognizing them, but having like identified a few of them before. Now when I come up against the pain of like, oh, if I give up this thing that I'm committed to, or this way that I think, it'll like hurt um for a while, but I know from doing it that like actually the hurt won't be very long and the benefit is like a really long time. So this comes up, I think, a lot in like intimate relationships of just like of like, oh, I'm committed to, like, I don't know, the house has to be this way just because it does. And if you realize like, oh, actually, just what if it wasn't? Like, what if you let go of that? And for a second, it's like peeling a band-aid, and then it's just like there's no scar there for the rest of your life. Yeah,
with
I don't know. Have you
with
found anything worth suffering for?
yeah, like I guess to a degree what I'm even doing now, and you know, I
Hmm.
have a 2 year old, and I would have thought that I would have become a little bit more pragmatic before she arrived, and it's kind of just made me not. I don't mean double down as in dig my heels in, but I I kind of think that it's the way I'm approaching life still makes sense to me. In from the perspective of like I think it's a worthwhile endeavor still. I would have thought that I'd kind of not that I thought I'd run back to finance or something, but I thought that I might be more skittish around it.
Hmm.
And but I think that it's kind of hard to quantify though, right? I don't think I'd be like the way I am as a father or as with my daughter or as a human with my wife. Um, if I was if I was like, let's say if I was still in finance, and that's nothing to do with finance determining this, but it's just how I was feeling within it. So it's, you know, while some things it can be convenient to try to single out and draw a direct correlation between or something, like I think there's things going on right now that I couldn't really quantify beyond what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But I think, I don't know, there's just something about there's something about the lived experience of life that I think we can probably put a lot more stock into than
Hmm.
just solely the outcomes of it. In that, but then that's a very hard thing to quantify, I guess, like in terms of the broad spectrum of life, or even my relationship or trust in the sense of life itself. Do you get me? Like these
Hmm.
are some of these things feel very difficult to make a direct trade off between something else, as in I'm suffering for this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the kind of thing you could put like, I'll take 9 units of suffering if it gives me 100 units of pleasure with this
Yeah, yeah,
discount rate over this amount of time. I think it really comes down to just like when you look back at the decision, where you go like, oh yeah, I just know immediately that that trade-off
yeah,
was worth it. And I think a lot of these trade-offs that we make afterward, we look back and we're like, maybe, I don't know, like, and
yeah,
and I think if it's not clear, then probably it should have been like you shouldn't have made the trade. That like the whole point of making a trade off is you trade a thing you value less for a thing you value more. And so like if you think that these things are about the same amount of value, then like the trade wasn't a very good one. I mean, you know more
yeah,
about this having worked in finance, but this is just like I'm supposed to be giving up the things that like I don't care that much about and getting more of the things that I do. That, and it was so clear to me leaving academia that that was the case. That just like, oh yeah, I'm like very clear what I'm giving up is like stability, legibility, being part of a community. What do I get in return? The ability to do exactly the things that I think are most important and that I care about and that I don't want to lie about or dissemble or sacrifice for something else. Like so clear to me that that was the right choice to make, even if at various points it was like difficult, or like made me feel crazy. The like those are the kind of like to make those trades. I feel like you just get I don't know. That feels like just free money in the bank. Um,
oh, absolutely. And you know, the role that I had finally left, I left on the first day, and like it involved a 40% pay increase. And I just remember pulling the chairman aside and saying on my first day that I'm going to be leaving. And usually when I've handed in my notice in previous roles, feeling some sort of like hesitancy or even anxiety, am I going to let
mhm.
people down? But with this, just total clarity. And you know, you mentioned there just I think there's something that's considerably undervalued in our quality of life, and just it's the absence of those things that you mentioned there, like the capacity to not have to lie, to not have to kind of bend yourself.
Hmm.
And I don't mean this in just some trite way that people talk about authenticity now as some fixed state. And do you know what I mean? Like I think it's more
Hmm.
even just like a how are you living this life, and how do you like, because I think some of the costs of these things, they might seem so small and inconsequential in any individual moment, but like the compound effect of all of approaching life this way all the time, and just projecting something that you're not fully there's like a lack of inner and outer coherence.
Hmm.
I think that causes a frightful amount of disharmony or suffering within us that we may not even notice, or it's
Yeah.
become so commonplace that we just think it's part of the game. I think it kind of comes back to, fear that's worthwhile, but suffering that's worthwhile as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think like it hollows people out. Like, and I agree. It's often not these explicit lies. Like, it's not like
No,
breaking the
no,
law. It's
no, no,
like
definitely not. No,
pretending that something is important that you don't think is important. Um, that I think like we actually like. I think a lot of us have the capacity to do that for a long time, but it takes such a psychic toll. Um, and it turns people just like cynical and tired. And I feel like I can see it when someone has one of these like central lives at like in the center of the work that they do, that just like they might still do a good job, but like they're really white knuckling it through every day, even if they don't realize it. I think in part because I think a lot of people assume that you have to do that like every job requires like a noble or an ignoble lie at the center of it. And I think it doesn't. It doesn't. You don't like you may have other trade-offs, but you don't have to pretend that something is important that isn't important, that like really important to you. I don't mean even just like, sometimes you got to be nice to people who you don't like. I mean like you don't. There are jobs that if people are honest, they're like, yeah, I think it makes the world worse. And like that just it just fills up your skull with bile until like you can't think straight anymore.
I think it's incredibly underappreciated. You know, there was something I wanted to kind of circle back to a little bit that you mentioned just at the start, just in terms of this question, this book that you're writing as well. Um, and also, you've mentioned at different times the sense of like moving closer to truth, and even the idea of letting go of previous thought and the pain that could come with that, but then the satisfaction that can come with it as well. In that inquiry around like why are we only using toilets more recently, essentially, but like is there something that you've been exploring or that you've discovered along that inquiry that has like taken a significant kind of act of letting go of a previous belief?
Yeah, I mean, I feel this every time I have to, like cut a big chunk. It feels like cutting off a finger. Either because like the thing that I'm writing about isn't true or it doesn't fit, it's not relevant, it's not right. Um, and I mean, every one of those paragraphs represents, an hour of my life turned into text. And so it really feels just like I'm taking the grains of sand of my life and I'm just like rubbing them out of existence. They're just not in the universe anymore. It's as if they didn't happen. Doesn't happen every time because sometimes I can use it somewhere else or whatever. Or like, I tell myself the story that like everything that you work on and write like comes back in some way later on. But some of it, it's just like it's just on the cutting room floor, and you're going to sweep it away, and it's going to go in the garbage, and you're never going to see it again. And like it hurts every time, to the point where I never do it officially. Like I never delete anything. I just copy and paste it or cut it and paste it into a Scratch document, and those Scratch documents have as many words in them as the rest of the book does for this reason. And like, oh, 1 out of 1,000 words will ever, less than that, will ever come back out of the graveyard into the land of the living. And the only solace I take is like as the graveyard grows in size, like that means I'm making progress. That like it's a graveyard of the wrong ideas, right? Like
Yeah,
these, if the graveyards of your enemies are growing, then it must mean that you're succeeding. I try not to think of I try to have a collaborative relationship with like the work that I'm trying to do, but I don't know. Sometimes that helps.
I love the sense of collaboration after hearing the word graveyard 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, in graduate school, I literally maintained a document called the Ideas Graveyard. I used to go in and talk to my advisor. I'd bring him three new ideas every meeting. 95% of those ideas we were like, they're not good, they're not right, they've been done before or whatever. And so afterward, I'd come back and I'd copy them out from my like things to talk to Dan about document and paste them into my Ideas Graveyard document. And there too, it felt like the more things I put in the ground, it means like the more things that I've explored. And
Yeah,
yeah.
but it sounds like a beautiful thing too, even with the sense of like a grief or a loss with these things. And like, man, I felt that when you said like a paragraph could be an hour of my life. Do you know?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that's a beautiful thing. Even just like the aliveness that comes with that, like to feel something so fully, or for it to be such a sense of I don't know, meaning or craft behind it as well. Uh, I don't know. There sounds something ironically with the use of the word graveyard, but there sounds like
Mhm.
something so enlivening about
Mhm.
that, or it matters, or it's meaningful. And I think during the course of this conversation, even just the significance of pursuing what you sense is like a closest moving something closer to truth. A willingness to put yourself out there, clearly, even just with some of your big realizations in life, and around even peer reviewed things, but just the fearlessness then in expressing ideas that you were mentioning, and the suffering that can be worth it as well, even at the very beginning when you were mentioning that kind of the straightening up of the frame that may never be straight, but there's something that feels important about it, the accepting that there may not be a moment where all the whack-a-moles disappear. And then obviously this kind of it sounds like this infusion or explosion of kind of curiosity when you made this big choice, which, as you say, may not be the most conventional thing to go through academia the way you did and just become a blogger, but the freedom that affords your work, and as you said, just the real significance of just doing stuff that you think matters and that is important on a regular basis, and the effect that has on your life as well. Really curious to ask you, Adam, the question of what is a good life for you?
It's all that. You did like I couldn't have put. Yeah, it's that. It's feeling like I've got something to contribute and I contribute it. And this is I think is a belief that I half believe without evidence. I do think there's like some ways of providing evidence for it, but I think that like I think there's a place for everyone. That just like each person has the thing that they are supposed to do, or like that they can do. That like there is a niche for them. It might not be the one that they hoped for or dreamed of, but there's a role that each person can play in the world that no one else can. And like the goal is to find it and to do a good job there. And I really think like big or small, there's just such an inherent sense of joy in being in the slot that you're supposed to be in, doing the thing that you're supposed to do. And I think it causes a lot of like psychic suffering if you don't find that. And and I think it can change over time. Like I don't know if this is the slot that I'll always be in, but right now it feels like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That I am supposed to like take thoughts, process them, like turn them into a thing that makes them useful for other people. And I'm supposed to spend a lot of time doing that and like really bust my ass and like really like frustrate myself in like how long it takes and how much I have to throw away. And at the end, I make maybe someone else's life like a little clearer and easier to live. I give them an insight that they might not have had otherwise, a way of thinking about things that they didn't have before. Um, I mean, that's pretty good. Like that feels great. Um, uh, to be useful to other people like that, in a way that feels very idiosyncratic. Like, for other people, it might be installing toilets. Like that's great too. It might be, closing up head wounds in the ER. That's great too. This is the thing I can do. I don't know how plumbing works, and I can't, I don't know how to stitch people up, but I can do this. I can turn ideas into easier to think versions of themselves. So yeah, that's what it feels like to me.
I think that's absolutely gorgeous, and I think as well what's so clear in talking to you, and maybe in others that have expressed that as well, the contagion that has on the rest of our lives, and the things that it keeps at bay in terms of not letting this life become a very cynical or kind of just frustrated experience. I think what you've described there, if that exists within one's life, I think it feel like it kind of permeates the rest of our existence as well.
Yeah, when people I think feel like, oh, the world's on fire and just like, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. There's too many fires. For me, I have some sense of peace of just like I have one fire in particular that I am working on putting out.
Yeah,
And like not everyone has to work on this fire. There's many other ones. They're right about that. But if you haven't found the fire that you want to douse, then of course it's going to feel like impossible because you can never see anything getting better. You can never see like the fire becoming contained and controlled and even going away. And so whenever I meet someone who feels so cynical about the world, it kind of feels like it's probably because you haven't found your way of contributing to it. And when you do, that doesn't mean that like everything's fine, but like that's why you continue the work. But until you find it, like I think you're gonna feel like stressed out all the time.
yeah. I'd never thought about it that way, but I tend to agree with you as well. Like I think there's something fundamentally important about that. Look, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today on the What Is a Good Life podcast. Just like with your newsletter, there's much that you've left me, which that I'll be chewing on after this. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to follow your work, and best look forward to seeing what book emerges from this latest inquiry.
Thanks. Great to talk to you.